Here are 21 frugal living tips that will save you thousands in 2023. Let's go. Develop an ongoing list of fun things to do. So I want you to either grab your phone, or you're going to grab a jar, some popsicle sticks, and get a little crafty, and you're gonna put together a list of free things to do, cheap things to do, kind of expensive but really fun things to do, and maybe some travel ideas throughout the next few weeks, through months. You can pull from this list and you can set goals around them too. You're not wasting time thinking of what to do or spending too much just because you think you need to spend a lot of money to have fun, which is absolutely not the case at all. Plan your vacations wisely. I love traveling, but I hate how expensive it can be. Seems like all the things I want to do are just ridiculously pricey, so I don't get to do them as often. However, if you do a few of these things I'm going to tell you about, then you can actually vacation more often, have more fun, and spend less money. It's usually better for a multitude of reasons to plan them out early, and you can usually get better deals. You could also do the flip side, and you could wait till the very last minute, and sometimes you could actually snag a last minute deal. For example, a hotel that didn't get as much bookings that night as they wanted to. Use websites like Priceline, which kind of scrapes the whole internet. It'll find cruises, flights, hotels, all that kind of stuff, and it will find you the best deal. Visit during non-peak hours. So if I want to go on a cruise to the Bahamas, maybe instead of going mid-August when everyone is there, I could go maybe earlier in the year, knowing it's still gonna be warm. It might be a little rainier, but I'm gonna save thousands of dollars on that cruise. And if you want to get creative, I found a website called housesitter.com where you can actually stay anywhere across the globe in other people's houses, and all you have to do is water their plants or take care of their dogs or their cats, and it's kind of this ecosystem where everyone just kind of swaps houses. I want you to learn how to use your credit card and credit churn, or this is called credit card hacking. And if you are using them for things that you were already going to buy, then that's actually smart because you're going to be getting 5% of your money back in most cases. You can build up points which you can use to travel for free. I actually got my first credit card at 18 years old. I now have 4 or 5 and they're each need-based. So I have a Walmart one that I use for my groceries and gas, then just put it on auto pay. I never actually go and pay my credit card. It does it automatically and I don't have to worry about it. Frugal living tip number 4, consistent and focused decluttering. This is a big one that I've had to learn this past year. I realized just how messy my house was, and it was really impacting my productivity, my happiness. I would wake up and it was just kind of like, oh yeah, didn't do the dishes. Yeah, the living room's a mess. The kitchen is a mess. It just made life, well, messy and complicated. Well, I decided that every single week I would tackle just, one room. Me and my wife, we're gonna just go after that room. We're gonna kind of purge it a little bit, right? We're gonna see, what in here do we actually need? What in here have we forgotten even existed? And it's way more than you would think. And then you can take the items that are valuable, you can sell them on something like Facebook Marketplace and actually turn that into kind of a small income source every single month. Or you could take, old clothes to something like a consignment shop. There's probably a lot of them in thrift stores and whatnot in your area. And the rest, just take to Goodwill, be a good person, get a little tax write-off. Ditch the storage. We have a ridiculous amount of public storage. Our garages are so full that cars have to be put on the driveway or on the street. And while I'm not quite to that point yet, I can see how storage can be a real issue even in my house, right? It's easy to shove things under the bed, in the closet, put it in a box. The thing is, if you can't see it, it's probably just sitting there collecting dust and you probably don't use it anyways. And that's gonna be the case for most items. One thing that I've started doing is developing the habit of making sure that everything has its own place. Shop secondhand. And depending on where you're at in life, maybe you don't want to do this, but if you're trying to live frugally, it's not a bad deal to go to somewhere like a thrift store or a Goodwill or even a Ross, TJ Maxx and buy things for usually half off, a quarter price of face value. Yeah, they're not the most fun shopping experiences, but I found so many good deals there. Saves a lot of money and it's just not that big of a deal, right? You can get clothing, you can get furniture, you can get other items, and you can end up reducing waste as well. Again, try to only buy things that you were already going to buy in the first place. That's how they get you. Find fun on Groupon and Google. So when we were talking about the date ideas and the fun ideas earlier, well, this is how you can find them. You can just do good old-fashioned Google search. I've tried using AI like ChatGPT to find these kind of things, but Groupon usually has a lot of cheap ideas. The other day I went on a bowling date with my wife. It was $13 for 2 games, and that was a great deal, and we had a really fun time. We didn't have to blow the bank to do that. I know when you get on Google, you can find a lot of cheap events, There's a lot of free public concerts and, movies at parks and all that kind of fun stuff that you wouldn't even know was there if you didn't try to look for them. Learn to pay more when necessary. And this is something that I really had to learn on my own. It's a hard lesson to learn because, well, when you're frugal, you think of not spending money so often. But that also can bleed into the area of being cheap. And what is cheap? Cheap is when you don't spend money on things that you should. Frugal is when you spend money only on things that bring you value, things that are good experiences, things that matter to you, and cut the spending on everything else. So here's a very tangible example. Let's say you want to buy a car. Obviously, I don't recommend getting a new car. But what about if you try to save a lot of money? You go buy a car for $3,000 or $4,000, super old car, and you're like, hey, it's cheap. Well, what about if a year later it needs a new transmission?
That friggin' hurt.
By the way, that actually happened to me, so it's not a good thing to do. It would have been better to pay the $6,000, $7,000, or even $8,000 for a slightly newer used car that would have lasted a lot longer and had less problems. Before you buy just on price, also account for the lifetime value of whatever you're buying, and don't be afraid to spend money on experiences, on dates, things like that. Tip number 10, take care of your crap. So back to the car analogy, a car typically costs about $1,000 to maintain annually, but it can cost you up to $5,000 if you don't take care of it. And that's according to some surveys out there on the interwebs. And so while it's easy to, stay frugal and to kind of put things off, make sure you're investing in your crap. Number 11, stop paying for education. I'm a big believer in education, but especially when you're starting out, if you want to be frugal, you can find most of what you need to know, especially at a basic level, just on YouTube. Just because something's expensive, like a course, doesn't mean that it's actually going to provide that much value. By the way, if you're finding value, do me a favor. If you're on YouTube, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe for more content like this, and give me a follow on the podcast. Let us know how we're doing, okay? I want you to learn to negotiate, okay? No one loves negotiation that I'm aware of, right? But you're always one phone call away from saving thousands. There's videos of people cutting hospital bills in half. There was this one woman who she had just given birth and they gave her a bill for $2,000, $1,000, I may be wrong, and she basically cut that in half just by calling and saying, hey, I could pay cash today, I can only do this much though. And they were just like, okay, cool. And you can do this with providers, you can do this when you're buying a used car or a new car. You actually have a lot more leverage as the buyer than you would think that you do. Do your homework before you make a big purchase and, kind of keep abreast on what the rates are. Maybe you can switch carriers or threaten to switch carriers. Don't be afraid to make those kind of switches because they could literally save you hundreds or thousands every month just by being strategic about that. Number 13 is the 30-day rule. Basically, if you want to buy something, give it 30 days. I know, that's hard. Maybe you find a really good deal or, you just really want it. Cool. But that's a lot of emotion, a lot of pressure, and I felt that myself. If it's a relatively big purchase, you wait 30 days. Keeps you from making a snap decision, and just trust me, it's going to make your life a lot easier, so you stop buying junk, you stop having waste, you stop wasting money. Frugal living tip number 14. I want you to only pay full price. If you struggle with deals, let's say you are going to the TJ Maxx and the Ross and you're saying, ooh, this shirt's half off. Cool, but did you need it? Were you already going to buy it, or are you just buying it because you think it's a deal? Only pay full price to make sure that it's worth it to you. Or if you have enough discipline and honesty, you could play a little mental game in your head. Look at an item and say, would I pay full price? Or I'd take it to the next level, would I pay double or even triple the price? Is that how much it means to me? If not, well, then you probably shouldn't make that. And if so, then cool. You don't need to feel guilty about it. Number 15 is to buy in bulk cautiously. So if you've ever been to a Costco or a Sam's Club or something like that, then it's incredible. It's everything that you'd find in a normal store for the most part, but 10 times larger and maybe 5 times more expensive. So you can get some really good deals there. You can save a lot of money, but you can also spend a lot of money really easily. Shopping at this kind of store is going to amplify the cost of impulse buying. Don't get 20 pounds of rice just because eventually you'll use it. Make sure it's something that's not going to spoil, something that you were already using enough of. Just be careful with that. Now, another frugal living tip that I highly recommend for anyone, this is actually your number one biggest expense for most average Americans, and this is your housing cost. Most of us spend about 33, somewhere in that ballpark, percent of our income just on housing alone. Obviously, we need it, right? Housing is important. You could just snag a roommate. That's something that a lot of us do in college, and that's probably the first place I'd recommend you go. Outside of that, you could find a cheaper apartment. And if you can't actually lower your cost of housing, then at the very least, I would recommend that you move somewhere really close to work so that you don't spend as much on gas, or maybe you could bike to work. Just anything you can do to lower those big expenses like housing and transportation will go a long way. Number 17, give personalized gifts. You know the feeling of receiving a gift from somebody and you're like, man, they don't get me. What about if you gave someone something that they didn't ask for that was way more personal? I think it would mean a lot more to them, and you could actually use this as a way to save money. You could take them on an experience, on a trip, on an adventure. You could take them out to dinner, spend the same amount of money, but have a good time to them. Basically do something super meaningful. We've covered 17 frugal tips that are super essential for anyone if they want to save money, and you can pick and choose which of these you want to try. But we're going to wrap up. These next few tips are going to be something that I think is foundational for anyone who wants to get started being frugal. And the first thing, number 18, is to get real. Living frugally is a journey. It's not something that you do overnight. It takes time, it takes dedication, it takes consistency, and it takes a lot of effort because this is actually a habit that you're forming. It's a way of life. Get real with yourself. If it's you and your spouse, get real together. Get real with your spouse, okay? Set a budget, come up with goals, get clarity on what you actually want to achieve, and then you can worry about the plan, right? How to get there. Get very specific and learn to prioritize what you want to do, what you don't want to do, and that'll help you make these decisions too. Start really small and just kind of build from there. It's better to master the art of showing up. Don't feel like you have to figure this all out overnight. I didn't. And then number 19, I want you to download something called Mint. It's a personalized kind of budgeting tool that tracks all of your assets. It tracks your income, your expenses. It gives you, an analysis so that you can actually understand where your money's going. You can also set goals within the platform and budget so that you can get to where you want to go. It'll even alert you about overdue bills and subscriptions that you don't need. So super important that you check that one out. Now, number 20 on the list is to understand your time value. This is another critical lesson that everyone needs to learn at some point in their life, and it's that their time is the most valuable thing they have to them. When an employer pays you $20 an hour, then they're saying your time is worth $20 an hour. So if you spend 2 hours trying to save $20, what have you done? Well, you lost money because you could have earned 40 and then taken your 20 profit. And that's kind of the lesson that you're gonna need to learn in life, is that your time is worth something and some things are not worth it. And you could flip this on the other side, right? If you buy something, let's say for $60, then that actually costs you 3 hours of your life. And that's something that you seriously need to consider before you make that purchase. Now, finally, 21 on the list is to meal plan. If you've been eating out and that's kind of the habit you have, well, then it's expensive. It does still take a decent amount of time if you're driving to and from places like that, and it's not very healthy. If you want the long-term benefits, you want to be healthy, you want to save money, then you got to learn how to meal plan. And the good news is it's not complicated. You don't need to know how to cook. Sit down and spend about 10-15 minutes coming up with a meal plan. And if you think that's not possible, well, I'm going to tell you, you only need about, honestly, 10 to plan your food and to order it, and you never need to leave your house. If that's interesting to you, well, then I suggest that you watch this video next on my right, and I'll show you exactly how in about 5 minutes. I'll see you there.